Hey everybody, it's Richard Harris and Scott Leese from the Surface Sales Podcast, brought to you by our sponsor Lead 411. If you're looking for direct dial phone numbers, cell phone numbers, intent data based on job changes and all kinds of other great stuff, please check out our sponsor Lead 411. We're super excited. We are on episode 135 in just over 7.5 months. So we're super excited to be talking today with Olivier, who I will, from MetaData, who I will not even attempt to pronounce his last name. So we're just going to go by Olivier. So Olivier, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So before we even jump in, just for context, right? So people can understand where your frame of reference comes from. What is MetaData? What's your average sales cycle like? Deal size? Whatever you're comfortable sharing in that regard.
Yeah. MetaData is in the MarTech space. Essentially what we do is we automate demand generation, focus on B2B. We essentially connect to your existing tech stack, and we automate demand gen in terms of advertising on Facebook, LinkedIn, display, so on and so forth. ASP is around 42K a year. That said, we have some customers in 20 range and customers in the hundreds of thousands. Sales cycle, actually, we just ran some things recently. Our sales cycle is really good. It's 42 days right now. But most of what we're selling is mid-market. So since COVID has happened, we've found a lot of traction in mid-market companies, which we categorize as around 200 employees to 1,000.
Got it.
You've got a 42-day sales cycle right now that you're running. Have you found that to be speeding up? And if so, what is your hypothesis on why? Is that just a function of you all being more efficient and better at what you do, or is there something happening, you think, in the market where these decisions are happening faster?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. So the sales cycle for mid-market companies is actually 22 days, I think. And what is happening is, given COVID, many marketers are being asked to do more with less. A lot of marketing teams are smaller than before. A lot of marketing teams had budget for field marketing, and now that needs to be moved to generate some leads and so on. And so for us, that has worked really well. The sales cycle tends to be longer with large brands, and we are bringing a bunch of enterprise brands, and those sales cycles tend to be about 3 to 9 months, depending on procurement and so on. And so what we've done is really double down on what's working really well for us, and that is mid-market companies, because they're more nimble, easier to sell to for the most part, very high growth projections that they had at the beginning of the year, and they're trying to climb back up, but they still have budget. And so we've really, SMB is hard for us to do business with, because for MetaData to make sense, given that we do a lot of experimentation with the campaigns, we want to ensure that there's enough budget from the company standpoint that they invest in. And so we found that mid-market companies are the best way to go right now.
Now, really tactically, I'm curious how you're measuring the start of the sales cycle. And I've done this differently. I've heard different things from different people. How do you measure the start of it, and why? Why do you think that's the best way?
Well, for us, a lot of what we're building is coming through inbound. So we've had some amazing campaigns. Jason Widup, our new VP of marketing, came up with an amazing marketing campaign, which was leveraging LinkedIn conversational ads, which is new. He's wrote some posts about it. And that has generated, I think, like 70% of our inbound is coming specifically from a DoorDash campaign, essentially. And so back to your question though, Scott, can you clarify again?
Is it like from the moment, let's say, that inbound comes in, or from the moment that the first contact is made, for example?
Yeah, so for us, it's from a demo request. So when that demo request comes in, and then you'll get qualified, but it's as soon as that lead came in, right? I raise my hand, like, I want a demo.
Yeah.
So in that regards, do people even come to your site to do white paper downloads, do research, or watch a video that's gated or anything like that? And do you still keep that up in the marketing funnel, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah, we don't gate anything on our website. Jason, our VP marketing, is like, we don't gate anything. We want to make sure everybody can access all the content. We do track who's coming to the website, right? So IP reverse lookup, and so we can see that. We also retarget a lot of people that come to our website using our own tool. So they come, they do research, and then we will target them. But then the other thing that we do with our tool is that we have a lot of data, and so we're able to go figure out who the ICP is at that account, and then we start targeting those individuals as well to increase the likelihood that they'll come back to the website and submit a lead demo form.
The other thing I want to point out too is that in your background, a lot of people may not know this, maybe many do, is that you were VP of Sales and SVP of Sales at G2, right? Which I think, particularly for the tech-minded folks, we all tend to know.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, was that an outbound sale or an inbound like this?
No. This is the first time in my career that I've been fortunate enough to be in a company where inbound is really driving the growth of the business.
So how did you? So just curious, when did you start to measure the sales cycle at a G2? Still on the demo request, or again, we're just trying to sort of talk about these things because nobody knows what's the right answer for them.
Yeah. So at G2, it was very much outbound from the onset of when I started. So I spent 4 years at G2. It was a great experience. It was a really small company when I showed up. Most people did not know what G2 was. And so for us to convince people to get reviews on our site, we did a lot of what I call guerrilla marketing, where the sales team would go and attend trade shows. By the way, I do miss trade shows. And trade shows were great for G2. We essentially went to all the trade shows. Sometimes we would not even have a booth. And then we had these badges, and I'm sure many people listening probably seen the G2 badges. And so what we would do is essentially bring FOMO to all of the people that were attending the trade shows who had a booth and say, hey, listen, you just invested $30K, $50K, $100, $250,000 on your booth. G2 is essentially, it's an online trade show. It's happening every day of the year. And the reason that you want to get reviews on our site is you want to make sure that if somebody's searching for software in your category, that they'll hopefully have an opportunity to land on your page and learn more about it. So we did a ton of guerrilla marketing where we brought this like, hey, I rank as a leader. I'm a high performer. I have, reviewers on G2 love us. And so we would just hand out all these badges. And that made people like, hey, I want a badge. And that gave us a really good opportunity to have a conversation about the fact that you just invested $30K at a trade show. How many leads are you going to get out of it, right? And wouldn't it be great to know everybody?
When would you start to measure the sales cycle? Was it the moment you gave them a badge? Like, would you go back to the CRM and have them put that in? Or was it once you had a conversation or something else?
Yeah, no. So we would document the activity themselves, but I would not consider that to be the start of a sales cycle. As soon as we get to a stage one opportunity, which is for us was we had a conversation. Is that conversation going to have another conversation? If not, that's fine. We'll just close it out and put the notes about the conversation happened. But if they're willing to have another conversation with us, that could be a month from now, 2-3 months from now, make that an opportunity and then put it in stage 2 at that point.
You, in addition to G2, I mean, you were running sales for FlipTop that got acquired by LinkedIn, and you were selling at Glassdoor. I have a couple questions for you. The first question that comes to mind is, how are you having to recruit differently now than in some of these prior roles? I mean, obviously you're president, so you're not running just sales right now. You're recruiting for more roles, but I'm just curious, like how the recruiting process, maybe specifically for revenue folks, is changing or has changed from your point of view right now.
Yeah, so the other companies I joined, I've never joined a company this early. So we just closed our Series A and should get announced in the next few weeks. But all the other companies I joined was like Glassdoor, FlipTop, G2, they all had pretty nice Series A. So when I showed up, there was budget, right? So my job was to figure out like how we're going to sell this product. Once we figure out how to sell it and package it, then you hire people. And so I relied heavily on recruiters throughout my career. This time around, a little more lean. And the other thing is COVID happened. And so I was not in a position to, the way that I led sales team in the past is like, I want everybody in the office. I want to feed off the energy. I want to get people excited. It's us against the world. We're going to take it over, so on. And Now it's really hard to do that when you're virtual, right? We do have morning kickoff calls for 15 minutes on the sales side, and then another one for the customer success team, 15 minutes every morning. And that's a good way for us to get together and chat, but it's really hard to get everybody in the office. Now I'm hiring people I've never met in person, right? We're hiring everywhere across the US. We are very spread out geographically around the world. I think we have like close to 40 employees, and I'd say 15 of them are outside this country. And I think we're in like 7 or 8 states. And so I've really changed the way that I'm evaluating talent. And one of the things that I'm doing is really leveraging my network more than I ever before. Historically, I would just call 4 or 5 recruiters and be like, all right, send me candidates. And then, we would get the candidates to interview. And then, that's really how we went about recruiting. This time around, I'm really leveraging my network, because hiring people that you don't know, hopefully somebody on the team knows them, because that's really important as you build trust, and then also get be part of the culture.
Is there what's the additional step that you have to take when you're trying to interview somebody but you've never met them in person, or is there an additional step?
Our interview process at G2 was I felt was pretty good. There was one thing that some people didn't like, which was a test. Our CEO Godard Abel was, there's a test. There was a personality test and kind of like an IQ test mashed up into one. A lot of people did not like that we started, the interview process with a test. And the thing is, it filtered out, I thought, way too many people. I think like 70% of the people took the test failed. But every step after the test, I've actually kept. And so usually it starts with the hiring manager will have a call, we'll just get on the phone with them for 20 minutes, figure out about what they're looking into, what kind of job they want, so on, explain the role. If there is mutual interest after that, the candidate sends an email. And the email includes 2 things: why they want to work at this company and why they're an ideal candidate for this role. I like getting an email out of the gate because that tells you a lot about the individual, right? If they don't follow up, we're not interested. 2, I want to see how good are they at writing via email, right? A lot of sales is happening via emails now, and that's one of the things that tends to get overlooked. So if that email goes well, then at that point, we will do a sales presentation. We will have them pitch us whatever they want to pitch us. And that call will have, the VP of sales, will have, a few other execs will be on the call. And the candidate will go ahead and essentially present for 22 minutes. And then we leave time for feedback. If that goes well, then there's 3 one-on-one interviews with the hiring committee. And then offer goes out.
What are some of the things that, like, have you shifted any of your questions as you go from in-person to online, right? Just, I'm trying to give some tactical advice, like, oh, you know what, I've started asking this because it taught me this about them, now that I'm having to interview in a virtual way. Anything in particular?
No, one of the things I like to learn more about, but maybe I should change my questions. So after the call, I'm probably going to spend some time thinking about that. One of the things I like to learn, though, is what is the person passionate about? What are their hobbies? Like, what do they do outside of work? And the reason I'm interested in that is I want to find people that are curious, right? Good salespeople are super curious, because if they ask a question, right, and then you say, tell me more about it, that's really when you learn what's going on. So I want to see that people, they're either reading books, or they're very competitive and they like to go mountain biking and do races on the side. I just like to get into what's the day-to-day life of that individual and what are they passionate about. Do they like to volunteer for a certain organization, things like that. Those are the things that I'm keen in understanding.
We've never asked this, and I find it interesting. Do you think, or how much do you judge their background, right? Where they're sitting, because some people can't control it, how they're dressed, right? Like, appearance has always mattered, but a virtual appearance.
Are you talking about their background of the Zoom type of thing?
Yeah. I'm just curious. Like, does it matter?
Wow.
Do we bring personal biases to that stuff? Not intentionally. They're unintended, right? Scott, I know you judge me all the time. So, and you've known me for 11 years. So
Vice versa.
So I used to be, I wore a suit to work until I was like 31 years old, like a suit and tie. That's what I grew up in, right? And so that's not that long ago. That was like, I stopped wearing a suit, it was like 10 years ago. But I like people who dress up, right? So if I am doing an interview with a candidate, even though, we're in COVID, I would like this person to be, it could be a short sleeve, but like, I'd like them to be wearing a collar, because that's the expectation I would have when they're at work, that, that we're be wearing a collar on a sales call. That said, a lot of people now are just wearing, t-shirts, and I think that's fine. But for an interview, I want to see that the person is trying and is going outside their comfort zone. And so they're, hopefully wearing a collared shirt would be appreciated if you're interviewing with me. But some of my team members that are interviewing as well don't care. So,
well, I think that's any candidate who knows what they're doing would ask these kind of things during the process to not screw that up.
Scott,
right?
you failed this interview, by the way. You failed.
I'm not interviewing for a job. I'm interviewing Olivier here. Okay, there's a difference, right? I want to talk about the advantages you think that maybe you have running a company, having the sales background that you have, right? And so many startups are run by people with engineering backgrounds, product backgrounds, finance backgrounds, what have you. I always get excited when I see somebody building a company and they've built and scaled a few sales orgs first. So what advantages are there that you think transfer over really well? And as you look back on your prior career, you're able to see things a little differently.
Yeah. And I think running a company or helping run a company there's a couple of things that I'm good at. And I'm very fortunate to work with Gil, our CEO. He's a former engineer, turned CEO. He's very technical. And so together, and he doesn't necessarily have the go-to-market experience that I've been fortunate to gain over the years. And so we're a great team together. So I think the things that are important to think about, one is, the product, the space that it's in, right? And for me, when I was looking at leaving G2 last year, I've been in MarTech for 7 years, and I'm super passionate about MarTech. And so that was one of the things. I had opportunities to go in different roles at different companies, but one, I was looking for a way to get out of the box of sales. I think I did pretty good as a salesperson over the years, but I was more passionate about learning more about the other sides of the business, finance, fundraising, all these things that I'd never really been part of, which were really exciting for me. But the skill set that I brought that I think was good, one is obviously knowing the space, right, and having connections and selling to these CMOs in the space for 7 years. So it's really easy for me to call somebody I've known, and say, hey, listen, I want your feedback on this. Can we schedule a call for 30 minutes and let me know what you think about this, right? So that's an easy way to break in. Two is I've hired close to 100 people at G2 while I was there. And so I got, I think, much better at hiring. Two is I've made some great connections, and you see the sales team that we have here at MetaData, many of them come from G2. And so it's nice to be able to, this is my fourth go around in the startup. So it's nice to be able to have a bunch of connections that you have and really good people that work with. And some of these people like to work in early stage companies. And so that makes it easier from a recruiting standpoint. The big thing about my advantage, I think, that I bring coming in is how to monetize a product, and understanding what your competitors are doing and what they're not doing well. And then being able to come up with a sales process that is not very combative. It's very easy. At G2, I felt like I had to, for people to pay attention to us, we had to challenge them. And in this case, I'm really trying to do the opposite, and I'm trying to remove as much friction as the sales process as possible. And so we are trying to only engage with people who want to learn about new ways to do things. And what we're doing here is essentially adding the ability to bring AI to demand generation, right? So instead of having a human go into Facebook and LinkedIn and create your marketing campaigns, the robots are all doing it, right? They're connected to everything, and then based on who's clicking on what's converting, everything's working for you. But now we have to convince people to let go of the wheel and let the machine do it, which is very different. And so what we're trying to do is remove as much friction. And so we're not asking for people to sell 2-year deals out of the gate. We're saying, hey, you want to start with a 6-month pilot? No problem, right? We're going to make it easy for you. And then the other thing we've done, which I think is kind of cool, we sell to marketers. So what we're doing is we're hiring marketers to come in and become like sales engineers, so that when the salesperson gets an inbound or they book their own meeting, they'll qualify it. And then on the demo call, it's a marketer talking to another marketer. So now we have the salesperson's on the call, but the salesperson's not doing the demo. The marketer is doing it. And here's why it's doing it. And somebody started today. One of our new marketers came from one of our customers. And so we're seeing that more and more. And we found that marketers love to talk to other marketers so they don't feel sold. So back to how we're doing things differently, I'm trying to remove as much friction and not be as challenging as I was in the past. At G2, we were very much in your face sales team, and people were like, wow, these are aggressive salespeople. And it worked really well because we didn't really have the marketing in the beginning. My first 2 years at G2, we didn't have the marketing team that we had when I left. And so that was one of the reasons we were more aggressive than we are this time around.
How do you? That's a fascinating. I've not heard anybody doing that where the marketer does the demo. I don't know, Scott, maybe you have, but how does the marketer like that? Like I could see some marketers being like, oh, that's a sales thing, right? Like, so there could be some level of resistance internally, and granted, it's coming from the top down, so you're doing it too, but do you have internal friction to that type of process?
Our VP of sales was the one, Clay. Clay and I have worked together at 3 companies. We met at Glassdoor in the early days. And he was like, you know what I want? I want marketers selling to marketers. We had a customer advisory board meeting. And so we have some customers, they're all marketers, they're on a call. We're talking about, hey, have you guys had pitches from our competitors? And they're like, yeah. And then they shared like how those were. And we're like, oh. And then I said, here's what we're thinking. And one of the members of CAB was like, that is fascinating, and I'm interested. Like, I want to talk to you guys about this. And so we found that it resonates really well, and our conversion rates are pretty good. I mean, I was looking at stats. Like, if you get to stage 4, the likelihood that a stage 4 opportunity closes and your sales cycle is pretty short is around 75%. So if we get to stage 4, like, we're going to win that deal 75% of the time.
What does sales do then? Like, what's their job?
Qualify and close. So they're doing the.
It's like they open, Richard, then they take a little snooze, and then they come in and close the deal.
Wow, Scott, we could have come up with that.
Procurement. I mean, we're moving up market. Procurement is security reviews. Those things are taking a lot more time, and we're super nimble, right? We have 5 quota carriers. I think we might have hired our 6th one. And the average rep is doing like, 4 deals a month.
And just out of curiosity, so this also brings up, in my mind, okay, well, what about compensation? How are you compensating the marketing person with the salesperson, right? How do you guys address that?
Yeah. So the marketer the marketer does more than just demos, obviously, right? But like 60% of their job is doing demos. The other parts of the job have to do with content creation, right? I was on a demo. This was the pain of the customer. I'm going to write a post about like, here's what I'm hearing in the market and so on. So content, thought leadership is super crucial because we're one of the newest, like youngest vendors in MarTech. And so we're trying to catch up. And so I think creating content, thought leadership is super important. So you're doing that. Now, in terms of measurement, 2/3 is a base for this marketer, and then 1/3 will be on stage 1 to stage 2 conversion rates, right? Because stage 1 is when the op shows up, stage 1 inbound demo. What percentage of stage 1 goes to stage 2? And we have historical data around it as well, but essentially we're going to say, can this person tell a good enough story on the demo to move it to stage 2? And how does that compare to historical data? And then based on if they're beating expectations, then obviously you make more money.
And how's the relationship between sales and marketing? I mean, I have an opinion, but I'm curious. Like,
it's never been this good at any company I've been at. Yeah.
That's what I was expecting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So
What's interesting is our CEO in the beginning was like, "You want to run all go-to-market?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to run marketing," because my CEO was a CMO before, and as you know, I'm friends with many of the marketers I've worked with historically, but I have very demanding as a sales leader about the amount of pipeline that we need, especially at G2. Is like, I need enterprise leads. And there's memes out there of me like just yelling at marketing for enterprise leads. And so I was like, I do not want to own marketing. I was like, you're a former CMO. I want you to own that, and that gives it a little more, friction, but just challenging, right? That way, the CEO, VP marketing, and myself, and VP of sales can get in a room and say like, what are we going to do about this? But we've blown out all the KPIs in the first half of the year. We just finished it up. And so now I'm actually going to marketing and asking to reduce the amount of leads because we have too many leads coming in. I just want to tweak have a little higher conversion rates. And so the quality, I'm asking for fewer leads and higher quantity. But our CEO is pushing for us to double the lead output, right? So he tells a really good story. And I'm like, no, we are overwhelmed with opportunities right now. So please tone it down.
He's fundraising. Do you?
We're Series B.
So the other question I had around this was, now that you've tried this, right, this unique experiment, and I guess so one is, what made you think to do it, and then the second thing was, what was the second thing? The second thing was shit.
Well, I'll answer the first one.
Welcome to live podcast.
No worry, I'll answer the first one. What you think about second? So what made us think about this is that there's a gentleman here at the company. He's been with us for 3 years. I started as a BDR, then became a salesperson, but he does everything. He does RevOps, he does marketing, and so on. His name's Logan. And Logan did such an amazing job at the demo that when Clay and I came on board, we're like, Logan, should you do all the demos? He's a marketer. He thinks like a marketer. He understands everything. He's been with the company for 3 years. He understands the product inside and out. We're like, he's doing an amazing job at telling the story, and people and the buyers don't feel threatened because it's not a salesperson, it's a marketer telling you a story. And so that seems to be resonating well. And we're like, let's do more of that. And so we just hired a new person. So now we have 2 marketers telling stories.
So let me ask you, now that you've done this, hindsight being 2020, right? Would you go back to the Glassdoors? Would you go back to the G2s and say, you know what? I wonder if this would work, right? If you had the person in the role selling to the same buyer, would you try it in those roles, in those companies?
I would. I mean, at Glassdoor, it would be interesting because you would essentially be selling to talent acquisition people. And I do think it would work really well, specifically large brands, right? If we were able to convince somebody from Adobe, talent acquisition, to go work at Glassdoor and then tell everybody, GE, you get on the phone with GE or, EA or something and be like, here's why I'm here, right? That story is like, they did such a good job for me at my last company that I felt compelled to leave my role and come here and basically just be an ambassador for the brand because the product works so well. So yeah, I will do this moving forward. I will also, want to join companies in the future where their marketing strategy is well thought out of the gate. I've worked at companies where I have a decent product, but didn't invest enough in marketing early on, and that just makes it harder. I don't think, because even at Glassdoor, we had like 40, 50 salespeople and only a few marketers in the early years. And it just makes it so much harder to scale a company effectively if you have so much manpower that is there just to book meetings, right? And then they maybe get 1 or 2 inbounds a month. So I'd rather scale a business where you just add reps as the demand picks up. And it should be essentially a math equation between the sales team and the marketing team, and you just look at hiring when it makes sense based on the inbounds that are coming in from the marketing team. But at the end of the day, if you have a good content strategy, thought leadership, and so on, sales is going to be much easier than just picking up the phone book and trying to call everybody.
You got every salesperson listening to this right now going, "Oh my God, I want to work there." I think there's a little bit of a paradigm shift happening. You know, I think what you're doing and the way you're thinking about it is, at the forefront of that kind of movement. And there's some other folks that we've talked to that are thinking about these things still this way. But there's still so many companies that are way behind, in how they're addressing that and how they're thinking about that. I want to ask you about a different type of sales cycle, if you can, that you just went through, and that's the fundraising sales cycle.
Yeah.
For all entrepreneurs out there and people running startups and people who are thinking about building out a product, one day. From all the conversations that I've had and a couple of times I've been a part of it, even though I've never been a fundraiser as a founder, it doesn't seem that much different than a normal sales process to me. Tell me all the ways that my statement is wrong.
Well, so looking back, it's not. The one thing that's different is your mindset, right? The first pitch I had was with Andreessen Horowitz. I was still at G2, but I was representing metadata, and that was our first pitch. And it's a mindset thing. I did not have the swagger that I had as a VP of sales at G2. I didn't have my talk tracks down. And so it took a while for me to get that. One, the talk tracks are super important, but having the confidence to be in that meeting, that took a while, because at first, for the first, dozen calls or so, you're just like, wow, I'm a VC and so on. And you're just, it's like my first time I played Pebble Beach. I'm just looking around, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I wasn't focused on the meeting itself or, the round of golf at that point. So that's the one thing I would say is, they want to see people that believe in their product and be, $1 billion outcomes. And that's really all they care about. And the other thing is, you're doing so many pitches. Like, I think we pitched, I would say over the course of 9 months, probably 70 plus VC firms. And every week we would have 2 or 3. And it took me a while to get my groove, but by the end of it, we got pretty good at it. Gil and I, we were a tag team for these calls, and I felt like I was holding us back because at first I didn't have the confidence, the storytelling and so on. And I didn't believe that, we could have, easily a $1 billion outcome here. And over time, by being part of the company longer and seeing our customers see outstanding results, and then bringing on some huge logos, I'm like, wow, I'm starting to believe this. And that really translated, and I became better and more convincing at telling the story. And, VCs, there's one thing that gets them to act, and that's oftentimes is FOMO, right? Same as a sales cycle, right? Yeah. So leverage that. And then I was also leveraging my own network, and Gil started to do that as well, where he's leveraging his business coach, who's making intros for us. And so we got way better at thinking about a VC as like an enterprise sales deal. And then the other thing, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. So 70 pitches to me for a successful outcome, that doesn't seem that bad. That seems, I mean, you're probably like, fuck you, Scott, this was exhausting. But if I go one for 70 for a couple $1 million raise, like that feels pretty good. I know people who've had 300-400 VC meetings before they got a yes. Is it just like so much more exhausting though, because like the weight of everything, as opposed to just trying to sell a $50,000 software deal? Is that it? Is there so much more of you that you're pouring into it on every pitch?
No, so you're not a good fit for a lot of VCs, right? Especially like we were pitching during COVID, right? So a lot of VCs are like, hey, your product is great. We love the team. Your space, we hate it. We lost a bunch of money because we invested in other companies in MarTech and we lost it. But we'll introduce you to portfolio companies, which is like, all right, cool. They won't give us their money, but they want to introduce us to portfolio companies. And so we would get customers that way. I'm like, all right, this is encouraging. And VCs they don't focus on everything. And the person that you have on the phone with you, the big part of the VC and investor relationship is like, what's their personality like, right? Because you're not a good match for everybody. And it's possible to buy something from somebody you don't like because you have a need for it. But your likelihood to invest in somebody that you don't like is really small. And so right out of the gate, right, it's probably like half of the pitches you're going to have is like, it's just not a fit from a personality standpoint, either, you know, because of me or because of, you know, our CEO, like they're just, something is not, you know, in tune. And so that happens. And then COVID made it much harder as well. And so that made us tell a different story. And so our story and our deck like improved over time. And I would consider, you know, this is very similar to like what it was like for me to sell, like, you know, Oracle at G2, right? Oracle was like a big account there. We were trying to break in. We did so many strategy meetings internally with the rep and the team to figure out like how to break into this account. And it's very similar with the VCs. So one, you have to put in the time, right? Research the profiles of the individual, making sure that you can connect out of the gate by building some rapport, talking about, you know, maybe they like mountain biking or going to Truckee and, you know, going water skiing and so on. So try to do that stuff anyway, so that you can build some rapport out of the gate, similar to sales cycle. And then you want to go in hard with the bang, right? Like, why am I here and why should you care? And I think we got better at that over time.
What did you specifically change? I'm curious, you know, and I agree, you have to pivot based on the world. What kind of things did you change? Like, what did your message change from pre-COVID to during COVID, right, to get their attention?
Well, marketers are being asked to do more with less across the board. There's less marketers working at companies. There's probably less budgets going around, but their return, right, how they're measured, right, they probably didn't go down that much. Yeah, your budgets, your marketing budget went down 65%, but, you know, we only reduced your goal by 15%. So get scrappy and figure out new ways to make this work. And for us, that's been great because we automate demand gen. And so instead of having marketers, like, you just, you know, let our system, our platform do it for you. So the messaging also changed, right? The amount of inbound we received in March, you know, we're getting, you know, we're a small company with 30 something employees. We're getting 30 demos a month in March. By May, we're at 180 demos a month inbound. And so that changed. Investors noticed that. So maybe yes, my confidence increased and our storytelling is better, but you show that chart and you're like, why is that happening? I'm like, because marketers need some help, and this is what we're going to help them with. And so that, you know, timing is also something that, you know, worked out in our favor here, because one, our VP marketer started in March, knocked it out of the gate with his first campaign, and, you know,
it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't sound like. I don't think it was. I mean, the timing of COVID is what changed, but I don't think the timing within your company changed. I feel like you guys got smarter faster, right? You sort of said, like, you know, and I said this a while ago, and I think it's happening monthly in some cases, and certainly quarterly, is that right now everybody's going through a whole new product market fit, right? Like, it sounds like you redefined your product market fit in April based on what happened, figured it out, and then, you know, and then I think people sort of were, all right, let's see how July, you know, let's see if everything changes by the end of July. Will we be back to normal? And then now it's like, okay, now I got to start really looking at this stuff for the long haul, right? It's really interesting. So I don't know that it was as much. I think it was more about brains, as you noticed the timing more than anything else, right? I don't think it was anything more than that, because even coming out of this, people are still going to. I mean, they've always wanted to do more with less. Like that is always, and you just have even more stories to tell to prove your to continually validate you. So that's well done. That's really cool.
One piece of advice though is, like, we have a lot of people that are coming to us and like, hey, can you do this for us? We're like, not a fit, right? We have no problem walking away from business repeatedly. We have large enterprise brands that are coming in or like, hey, we want to buy you guys, but we want you to do this, this, and this, and this, and we want you to build these integrations for us. I'm like, no, what we're doing right now is working so well. Like, I don't have time for this. If you want to sign a $2 million deal for 3 years, yeah, I will go build those integrations, but unless you're willing to do that, like let's chat again.
How
in
many of
6
them
to
are
12
coming
months.
back and just taking what you have off the shelf?
Sometimes they are, yes, for sure. We got some big ones that we're super excited that are coming on board this quarter.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, people don't like when you say no or you're not a good fit. I use that all the time in the sales cycle. You are not a good fit for us.
And they don't like it, but then those ones are the ones that often come back later on and are sort of.
They want to prove you wrong.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you guys ever see the Peel and Keel video about the telemarketer?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's so
yeah. That's my favorite one. That's my favorite one. I have a video of my son doing some telemarketing over the weekend for fundraising. I'm thinking about writing a blog post about a 12-year-old's not afraid to pick up the phone. You shouldn't either.
That's awesome.
But anyway, this hour has flown by, the last 45 minutes. So one of the things we always do towards the end of a show is to say, how can we help you? What can we do to support you? Whether it's an issue you're supporting completely separate of work, whether it's something other than, obviously plug your organization for, people to get a hold of you. But if there's something we can help you with, want to ask a question about business advice, we're happy to, throw our brains behind it.
Okay. I wasn't not expecting that question. I mean, I think right now is, the one thing I would ask is for people to, keep having empathy. I think it was really easy early on in COVID having empathy, and as we're going into, the election that's upcoming and things like that, I just, have empathy. You don't know what people are going through, and also give them back. Right. I think it's important for everybody to, pick projects where they're giving back to the community. That's something that, we're doing as well with work. So we've, fun thing about a new startup is you get to bring in all these new cultures. And so we are dedicating one day a quarter to different charities as an organization. So one day we will go and donate, one day a quarter, we'll donate the whole day to do something and give back to the community. So I no causes per se that I want to highlight today, but just having empathy and always thinking about giving back.
That's great. I love the idea of spending one day a quarter to do something as a company for, the local community, wherever that may be. I think I'm starting to see more of these kinds of, I want to use the word perks. It's not really a perk, but just like initiatives, basically, like, hey, mandatory days off here, go do this for the community, go support, such and such organization. So I think companies are trying to get creative in how they can give back, like you were saying. So, well, we
and then
really
also
appreciate
take time. My last thing is take some time off. A lot of people are burning out right now, and so like most of my go-to-market team was like, guys, it's August. Like go enjoy the sun and make sure to relax and get some fresh air, because I feel that most people are working harder now than they probably have a long time, and so you want to make sure you take the time.
I have this particular problem, and Richard is always telling me to go take time off. So you're preaching to the choir. You're making him look smart, Olivier. I don't like this part of the show.
He's very smart. I mean, come on, we live in the same neighborhood.
Broken clock is right twice a day, man.
Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us, Olivier, and good luck with everything as you move forward. And stay in touch and let us know if we can be helpful.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Olivier.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.